Another week, another Q&A session. Buckle up, today's questions are hard-hitting. It's about to get real. This is Q&A episode 3. As always, the easiest way to get questions to us is to email us at the email address down in the description. We're going to jump right into the first question.
Question number 1. Has it been a perfect transition, or does Cadence have some struggles adjusting to our culture and the way of life? What has been difficult for her? First of all,
Disclaimer, we're about to get real.
I laugh at the word perfect because nothing in life is perfect. My kids aren't perfect. I'm not a perfect parent. Our house doesn't function perfectly. So no, nothing has been perfect.
Cadence isn't perfect. People always say, your kids are so well behaved. Well, bear in mind, we do not put disciplinary problems on YouTube.
Right.
As we shouldn't. Our kids would never speak to us again once they were old enough to know that that's not
Right.
cool, Mom and Dad. Why would you put that on the internet?
Yeah.
So we purposely don't put that stuff on the internet. And I think some people think that we're falsely putting out a narrative out there that we're the perfect family. Nothing bad ever happens in our household. You know, sometimes we have to hit stop on the recording because they're misbehaving that bad, or one of them just did something cruel to the other, and we have to sit down and shepherd their heart and put YouTube aside, and then we have to come back to the video whenever the time is right, like nothing ever happened. Well, think about it. From our perspective, we're not going to throw into a middle of a blog and tell you everything that just happened, because that's our child's private opportunity,
Right.
To seek forgiveness from their sibling, to not be publicly shamed on YouTube. So just because we don't put that ugly stuff out there doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So not only are our kids not perfect, not only are there discipline problems with all 4 of them, yes, including sweet, innocent Katie, but, you know, adding on top of that what this question references, which is the culture shift for her and the way of life, it's just so hard to tell with her, because she genuinely loves the new experience.
Mm-hmm. Quickly after we got home, one of the conversations we had with Katie is it complicated or is it hard to be in a family because we have boundaries that we have to abide by for safety, for teaching them what's right and wrong? And she said yes. And so our boundaries for our kids look different than what she had at the orphanage. So that has been an adjustment for her, because she has now like a safety gate to know what's right, what's wrong, what's acceptable, what's not, and trying to figure out where she plays in or where she fits in that safety gate has been a challenge.
Often we get questions from people and I can hear what they're asking, and I don't know if this is what you were really asking, viewer, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think maybe some people need to hear it, and I think we need to talk about it. It is far more difficult to adjust from having no family to living with a family than it is from living in India to now living with white people. I'm throwing that out there, and I'm saying it very plainly, because what people would probably assume is that the biggest culture shift for her is going from living in Calcutta, India, to Central Florida, going from living with primarily dark-skinned people to living with a white family, and then there's the culture shift, and then you add in language. But as difficult as all that is, we have seen that the most difficult thing for her has just been learning, like Melanie said, to live within the boundaries of family and know what family dynamic looks like. That's been a far bigger culture shock than the typical way we think of the definition of culture.
Right.
And that is something we truly never expected. We expected her to, frankly, hate the food. We expected her to actually get sick once she was trying to adjust to some of our foods. We expected her to not want to sleep in her own bed. We were prepared for her to sleep between us in our bed for maybe months, if necessary, for her to adjust, or maybe want to sleep with her siblings. We get people asking us, why doesn't she sleep with her siblings? Well, you know what? The first night we brought her home and she saw her room, that's where she's wanted to sleep ever since. Something that social workers told us along the way was, let your child guide you through this process. Yep. As much as we're setting up the boundaries for her to keep her safe and help her adjust, a lot of stuff has to go at her pace. And when it comes to the actual culture shift of India to America, she's gone at a lightning pace. She's been she's been so brave. That's not something we could script on any vlog.
Oh, no.
She's incredibly brave. She embraces new things, new food, new people. Sometimes she's shy and hesitant, but she's cute about it, and she has this submissive spirit that wants to just say yes and embrace opportunity. I always go back to this, but a year of looking at our photo album got her so excited for the journey that I think she's just taking it one day at a time and just enjoying each step. So, referencing the second half of your question, which is what has been most difficult for her?
I think it is just trusting mommy and daddy, knowing that we aren't going anywhere, we're not giving her up. There's nothing that she can do right or wrong to keep us from loving her. I think that's the most difficult, is knowing, like, having her secure in our family and knowing that regardless of what happens, she's still a Chandler. She's still ours.
And nothing can undo that.
Right.
You know, bonding with your adopted child is a long process. It does not happen the moment you see each other. You have that early honeymoon elation, but the first time your child disobeys you or outright lies to you, oh, I know, Katie would never lie. I know, no, Katie would never lie. None of our children lie. But the first time your child does something that really irks you because you said, don't do this, and then they waited till you left the room and then did it. Parents, you know what we're talking about.
And
Children,
you're still not getting the truth.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Children test boundaries. It's what they do. And every social worker said, she will test every boundary with you. And it's a normal part of growing up. We actually do that with all of our parents. We all test boundaries and see what we can get away with. And we sometimes have to fall flat on our face and do things wrong in order to learn to do them right. So she's done that stuff. And it's been normal. Coming back to what Melanie said, I think just the simple act of learning to trust mom and dad in a way where nothing can shake that trust is probably the hardest thing for her. Not because we've done anything wrong or she has trust issues, but it's just it's new. It's a normal part of bonding. And bonding just takes time. It does. And it takes one-on-one time. And bonding takes a certain amount of incubation. And that's not something we understood until we were really taught it along the way by courses we had to take, by social workers, by books that we've read, and by articles we've read, by listening to other adoptive parents who adopted before us. Incubation is so important for a family. When you bring your adoptive child home, you have to, to a certain degree, you have to shut out the world. You have to limit your interaction with outsiders, including, but not limited to, extended family, strangers, people at church, teachers, tutors. You have to be careful how quickly you throw your child out into the world, because your child is learning to bond with you and learning to bond with parents for maybe the first time in your child's life. Every additional adult relationship you throw into the mix confuses it. It blurs everything. It kind of muddies the water. There's probably a lot of books and articles we could provide that could explain it better than we can, but this topic actually sets us up perfectly for our second question, which is, how will you preserve her language? We get asked this question so much.
Preserve her culture, preserve her
culture, preserve her language. And I'll give you one guess for who asks this most often. You guessed it, Indian people. Obviously, our Indian viewers are most concerned with watching a little Bengali girl adjust to life in America. They don't want to see her lose her language, lose the things that make her uniquely Indian and uniquely Bengali, which is a subset of being Indian and being a West Bengal native. We feel the same way. If we were to bring her home and let all that fade away, we would be changing her. She would become something different than the little girl we fell in love with. We don't want to lose any of that in Cadence. But we have to merge that together with what we also know, which is our bonding season is not done. We've talked to so many people and sought so many opinions, Indian, American, both. We've sought social workers, teachers, other adoptive parents. We've talked to people who work in orphanages, people who work with the foster system, and unanimously they all say to be very careful how quickly you introduce a tutor or any system to try and preserve language, and that you'd be better off letting the bonding season occur and complete, though it kind of never completes, right? It's an ongoing thing. But let enough time go by to where your child is securely bonded and secure in their trust of you and in their connection to you, that they know you're never going anywhere. Let that season have the time that it needs before you jump into introducing tutors or anything like that to try and preserve language. Not that it can't be ever introduced, but that especially where we are only 2.5 months into our life with her, that introducing, for instance, a tutor right now, it could be anywhere ranging from potentially bad to disastrous. I'll give you one example of a documented case of an adopted child being introduced to a tutor so that the tutor could help that child learn their native language and preserve it and speak it on a regular basis. Well, in that situation, that child bonded to the tutor instead of bonding to mom and dad. And the moment the tutor is removed, you can guess it, the child begins to regress, have nightmares, not rely on mom and dad, not respect mom and dad, act out in ways the child never did prior. And you can see where it really confuses the heart of a child, because that child now has emotionally bonded to someone in between the orphanage and mom and dad. You throw in someone else that the child has now had to bond to, and then now has had that person ripped out of their life. Well, it makes the child less likely to want to bond with mom and dad, because now the child wonders, is mom and dad going to disappear just like the tutor disappeared? Mm-hmm. And maybe a 7-year-old wouldn't think that way, maybe a 12-year-old wouldn't, maybe a 4-year-old wouldn't, but it's not something we're comfortable risking. People may hate that, they may understand it, they may not, but when we put it all together, we realize that there has to be an order to everything. Mm-hmm. And neither of us think that Katie is just, everything's perfect, bonding is done, she's happy, she's comfortable. I mean, for all we know, she's just being nice and she hates the food. I mean, how would we truly know? How could we know? Maybe she is having nightmares at night and not telling us. Maybe she isn't as bonded to us as we think. How could we know? That's why even though she's the sweetest girl, that's why even though she has done so well, we can't call it perfect, because we don't know her heart yet like God does. We don't know everything happening in her mind, and we have to take it one step at a time, give this season the amount of time necessary for her to bond to us and for us all to get to the point that we realize she's finally become secure in her love for us and in our love for her. So all that being said, we want to preserve her language. We do. I love hearing her say Bengali words. It makes me want to get emotional talking about it. When she said in our videos, Koto Boro, how big, the bubbles that she was blowing, oh my gosh, her accent. I never want her to lose her accent. I never want her to lose her language. Mm-hmm. I wish she could have every memory preserved. But I know that's not reality. I know she might forget part of Bengali, and then at some point, if we get her a tutor, she'll have to relearn some things. And if that means that she ends up closer to mom and dad and then has to relearn Bengali, I think that's better than having Bengali the whole time but not being as close to mom and dad as I could have been. Another reason that our agency, and actually multiple agencies, have told us that you should hold off on language preservation and give due time for bonding is that it actually discourages your child from being dependent on you. It's actually a part of bonding that your child learn English. This is not just about one language versus the other. Learning English is actually part of the bonding process where you learn to depend on mom and dad, but also to ask them for the things you need that you know only they can give you. Like boom, that blew my mind. And that never occurred to me, because I was one of these people who thought, we can preserve our language, we can do everything, we can have it all, we can do whatever we want. When she knows the path forward is English, but we introduce a tutor that reminds her of where she came from, it creates a tug of war between the old life and the new life that is just unnecessary at this stage. All that being said, we want to preserve her language. If there was any way we could introduce it right now and also feel safe that our bonding wouldn't be hurt by it, we would do it. But we, for now, feel like we have to focus on bonding with her and making sure there's no hindrances to her bonding with us. That being said, I am excited for a time when we can focus more on language preservation. We talked plenty about that.
Yes. Question number 3. Has it been difficult for the boys to adjust to having a sister? Not at all.
No.
The hardest thing is keep the door shut when you go to the bathroom. That's basically it.
But they do really well.
But they do better now.
We're gonna get real again, fair warning. I was terrified that when our daughter came home, she would see male genitalia constantly. Our boys never used to shut the door when they would go potty. They're just little boys. They go in, they do their business, they don't even aim well, they forget to wash their hands, and they leave. They don't flush, and they leave.
Right.
And we have to go, did you flush? Did you wash your hands? Did you shut the door? and then they would forget the lesson
Yep.
and go do it all over again next time.
We had a boy that likes to pee outside. So that has been...
Write in the comments which child you think that was.
Yes. So that was something that we fixed right away. They've been doing amazing. They love her. She loves them. They're really close. Closer than what I think anyone else anticipated.
I mean, they have opened up their hearts to her so much. This is really touching. There's not one day that goes by that one of the three boys doesn't tell Katie that she's beautiful. And they use that word. They tell her, you're beautiful. I mean, I feel like I've done something right. Don't you?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
For all that we do wrong as parents, because we mess up all the time, to hear my young men tell this girl, you're beautiful, I just feel like that's like an award I feel like I can put on the shelf.
Yeah.
It touches my heart whenever I hear that. Caleb did it today. She put a hairband in her hair. So she put her hair up in a little ponytail, and Caleb said, you look beautiful like that. And
he also says, I like your accent. He says that too.
Caleb always goes, Dad, did you hear her? Doesn't she sound cute? And then then Caleb will try and mimic her Indian accent, and he gets it. He's actually getting pretty good at doing it too. But
That's funny.
Going back to the day we came home, where Katie and Caleb didn't even want to hug each other, and I said, you want to hug her? And he goes, I don't think it's going to happen, Dad. To where they are now, the boys have just done great, quite honestly. Just fantastic. The next question is, what's the best advice you can give to someone young who's aspiring to adopt in the future? First of all, we think that's awesome. We're always impressed by the number of teenagers and 20-somethings who say they want to adopt already and are trying to save up for it or are waiting till they get married or something like that. It's just, man, that is awesome.
That's so great.
That encourages us so much. What's the best advice we could give? It could be emotionally or financially, etc.
My best advice is for a teenager or a 20-something-year-old to find a parent who has adopted a child and have lunch or dinner periodically, consistently. Doesn't have to be every week, but on a consistent allotment of time, and pick their brains. Ask them questions. We did this. We had dinner with a couple who had biological children and adopted. And we picked their brains.
And they were a big family.
And they asked tough questions to us. We asked tough questions to them. And it was a very iron sharpens iron, trying to figure out if this is something that we felt called to do or not. So that's my best advice, is just find a parent who has adopted. And most adopted parents will be ecstatic that you are thinking about this and will welcome you into picking their brains. So that would be my best advice to someone that's younger.
I can't beat that. That was a great answer. I guess the only thing I would add, because you said financially, you could start saving now. You can always save up for adoption. To some degree, that kind of does take care of itself. I know. It's like, how does an adoption that costs so much money take care of itself? It just does, honestly, in the long run. But you would be better off right now as a young person just to start reading as much as you can. There's a great book called Orphanology by Tony Merida. If you're planning to adopt internationally, you can read Parenting My Internationally Adopted Child. You can find that on Amazon. There's books out there, there's videos, there's all kinds of ways you can learn now so that when the time comes, you'll be prepared and you'll already have in mind how you want to do things. So it'll just be a matter of doing it. The next question is from one of our viewers. I'm actually wondering about adoption, as my wife and I sadly were unable to have children. So what do you think? Should we go for it or wait a couple of years? We've been chatting about it a lot lately. First of all, we are honored you would even ask our opinion on something that is obviously so important in your life. I think Melanie and I would probably agree that the question you should be answering is probably not should we wait or should we do it now, so much as you should be focusing on joining your hearts together on knowing that this is right for you.
Sure.
And getting ready to cross that threshold when the time comes and when you're both comfortable with it. If you did it now and it came at the sacrifice of one of you being ready but the other not being ready, don't do it. That's just our opinion. Not that we're right and everyone else would be wrong, but we would probably say it's not best, because If one of you tends to be the one dragging the other through it because you're ready now but your spouse isn't, it's not going to be enjoyable for either of you. You both won't be able to fully embrace it and meet this challenge head on, because it is a challenge. It's not perfect. It is stressful. It is sometimes dirty. It's financially taxing. It can cause fights. We have fought about adoption before. It will test your marriage. So I think to us, it wouldn't be so much a question of do we do it now or do we do it later. It's, first of all, do we both think this is what God is doing in our marriage? Do we think this is right for us? And do we think we can do it together? Because once you're able to say yes to that, it really doesn't matter when you do it. Even if you started now, most countries these days, if you're adopting internationally, that is, it's going to be many years of a waiting period anyways. So it's not so much, are you ready now? It's just, are we together and at a point where we can run this race together?
Absolutely. Question number 6. How old was your adopted daughter when you started this process? She was about 3.
Very young.
How long did this whole process take? From the beginning of our application, or I should say from the beginning of us finding a agency, which took a couple weeks, to us getting her home was over 4 years. It was about 4 years and 3 months of a process.
Yep. Next question. Did you choose Cadence or did the agency match her with your family? Actually, neither. In India, at least at the time, the Centralized Adoption Resource Authority, which is CARA, are the ones who match you with your child. So, at least at the time in India, the agency and the parents really had no say. You just wait for a referral and one day you get a match.
Typically, they give you 2 profiles and you get to pick one of those within a 24-hour period.
Very difficult to do, but that's their process.
Question number 9. How much did your adoption cost?
Disclaimer, we're about to get real.
$40,000.
Boom.
That was divided up into segments, so it's not like we had come up with the $40,000 all at one time. But there were massive chunks out of that $40,000 that was due
throughout the process.
So coming up with $8,000 to $10,000 in one segment was really hard.
Very difficult. But every time we needed it, God provided.
Absolutely.
So now our questions take a shift from being more adoption focused to being homeschool focused. So we're going to end today's Q&A with a couple of questions about homeschool.
Why did you decide to homeschool?
Because schools in America are so bad. No, we felt it was the right thing for our family.
Yeah. Caleb started off in private school, and we quickly realized that we were not going to be able to afford private school for 3 kids at the time. And so we decided that homeschool was a good option. Public schools here, at least where we're zoned, weren't a good fit for our family. So homeschool was a good option, and we kind of just said we'll test it out for a year or 2 and see what happens. And Caleb likes it now. Caleb actually asked me this week, "You're not going to take me back to normal school, are you?" That's a huge blessing, because 2 years ago, that would not have been the answer. He would have
Caleb would have been saying, "Can I go back to school?"
Yeah. We've grown, he's grown, and now homeschool is just a part of our normal routine, and I really like it because I get to spend a lot more time with my kids. Homeschool is a good way for me to see how gifted my children are and in what areas, and I just love that. I love having that privilege that I can see something new and exciting in their life and where their lives are going to guide them.
Every day we get to see something new about what makes them uniquely them, and then kind of tailor our approach with them and our teaching style and maybe the things we focus on that semester to kind of help their passions take flight within them. It's amazing to be able to be involved in that as a parent. And that leads us to our last question, which is basically, should that be a parent's job? We get questions all the time ranging from what made you choose homeschool to when are you going to put them in real school?
Oh my gosh. Real school.
I responded to one person and said, actually in America, homeschool is very similar to being taught in a brick and mortar public school or private school. There's curriculum. I mean, if I could pan over and show you our children's desks here in the room, you would see books and books and books of the same curriculum that kids in school use, except their mom's teaching it to them. You still get a high school diploma, you still go to college. There's just as many opportunities, especially these days, for a homeschooled child as much as there is for any other child. There's obviously the questions of, what about the social aspect? Well, first of all, in a big family, they're
That's
plenty
not a big-
social.
yeah.
And then in addition to that, we put them in extracurricular activities. They have friends in church. They have friends outside the home. They have friends across the street and down and that way and every way. And which sideways we live in a neighborhood full of children, so they get plenty of social time. There's really no drawback to it. There's just benefit for mom and dad, benefit to our kids.
Right.
And then like Melanie said, Caleb and really everyone is getting the same way, where they're really starting to appreciate being taught in the home and realizing it's not a drawback. It is a huge blessing that they would have a mother who's willing to sacrifice her time and make that her life's goal to enrich the lives of our children. So how does homeschool work in America, which is basically our last question? Pretty close to public school, with the exception that instead of taking 8 hours a day to teach our children, we're able to do it in less than half that time, because we come in and we focus and we get our job done and we get our work done, and then we're able to spend the rest of the day teaching them practical life skills through other activities that we do with them.
We hope this Q&A has answered some of your lingering questions.
We know that as our viewers, you probably look at our life and some things make sense, but then you gotta wonder, why do they do things the way they do? What is that about? We do this series just to help you continue to get a look inside who we are, why we do things the way we do. Everyone has their own way of doing things. By answering these questions, we're not saying that ours is the only way of doing things, or that it's even the right way of doing things. It's just the way we do things at this point in our life. So we hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a like and leave a comment. We appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're almost to 10,000 viewers. That's coming up pretty quick. We want you to be the part of the last 500 that helps us get across that mark. Don't forget that we're going to be going live on this channel once we get close, so that we can get to that 10,000 together with you. We're throwing a party. It's going to be so fun. We hope that you'll throw a party wherever you're at and celebrate Two in a Zoo getting 10,000 subscribers. Don't forget to send us more Q&A questions so this series can continue on. See you tomorrow. Announcing the new Two in a Zoo gift shop. We heard your request and now we have merch available for purchase. Check out the link in the description and be sure to grab your favorite Two in a Zoo merchandise today. When you receive your item, we'd love to see you wearing it, using it, drinking out of it, or just enjoying it. So be sure to send us a picture of you and your favorite items to Mike and Mel at twoinazoo.com. Thanks for the support and happy shopping.